So hello everyone, my name is Kay, and I want to thank Bridges to Life for inviting me here, and I want to thank all of you for choosing to attend this program, because I do know it's a choice. I want to start off by telling you a little bit about me. I've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years. I have spoken in many different prisons. I even developed my own program. Tonight's going to be a little bit different. As you know, you're going to hear my story. Now, my story is a little bit different than what you've heard so far. Actually, my story starts before I was born, and I'll get into that in just a moment. What I would like to do, though, is start with a question. And the question is this: how many of you know the term ear hustle? Okay, so those of you who don't know, I'm going to tell you, and those of you who do know, you can correct me if I'm wrong. So here it goes. Ear hustle is a prison term, and what it means is you are listening into a conversation and they don't know that you're listening. That's ear hustle. So tonight I'm going to ask you to get your ear hustle on as we go through this. So to begin, like I said, my story starts before I'm born. My mother, when she was 16, was raped. And she was actually raped by a preacher's son. Now, this did not set her up very well to have a good sense of herself. Compile that with being abused for most of her life, you could say that she was pretty messed up. And she tried to be a good mother as best she could. But because of what happened to her, her picker in men was broke. Also, her self-worth was in the toilet. And she developed a drinking problem and later on a drug problem. So when I was 3.5, I don't even remember where we were living. I was at a babysitter, and if you can imagine, I was about this tall, and I had long blonde hair. And that babysitter and her friend would swing me by my hair. They would grab me by my hair, one, and the other by my feet, and they would swing me. And the babysitter would hit me. And she would...
just from the top there.
So when I was 3.5, I had a babysitter, and I had long blonde hair, about this tall. And the babysitter would grab me by my hair, and her friend would grab me by my feet, and they would swing me. And she would basically torment me. She would torture me. And I never said anything because I was 3.5. I didn't know what to say until finally one day my mom said, "Why don't you want to go to the babysitter?" You know, someone always complained of upset stomach or whatever. And I finally told her what happened. And so she got me away from that. And then she met my stepfather, Dale. Now, Dale had 2 sons, Mike and Tony. And when my mom met Dale, I was about 4.5, almost 5. My mother was pregnant with my brother. My father, she met when she was 19, and he was 32. And he was already married and had 9 kids. So we were kept a secret the whole time. And in fact, later on in years, he even denied that he was my dad. So I didn't have a dad. He was an immigrant from Ireland, prominent in the community, and even the guy on my birth certificate is not my father. So my maiden name is truly my own. But anyway, back to Dale. So she met Dale, and they got married. And I used to call Dale a waste of human skin, if that gives you any indication of the monster that he was. And his sons were his spawn. So that's when my sexual abuse started. when I was about 5. And it continued for many years. Now, my mother would go on a drinking binge, and she would rage. In fact, one night I remember waking up with all the dishes being broken in the house. And then she disappeared for 3 days. And that wasn't the only time that happened. She would leave me with him. Or if she decided to take us, we would go to some aunt's or uncle's house. And we never knew whose house we were going to land in. And then I became victimized by them. In total, I had about 13 abusers that I remember. There are big chunks of my childhood that I don't remember. The only break that I ever got was when I was in about 4th or 5th grade. I believe it was 4th grade. My mother tried to commit suicide by overdose while carrying alcohol. And she changed her mind. She called the ambulance. And that actually turned out to be a good thing, not just because she survived, but because we got to go live with my grandmother for a year. And that's the only time I was ever safe, like really safe. A whole year I got to live with my grandmother, and she was awesome. She could make anything. She did upholstery.
She could make anything.
She could make anything. She did upholstery. She taught me how to make a grilled cheese sandwich. She was an amazing woman, and I came to view her more as my mother than my grandmother. In fact, sometimes I would trip up and call her mom. And during that time, my Aunt Marcia, my mother's oldest sister, well, her only sister, came to visit. Now, if you can picture the epitome of hippie chick, that was my Aunt Marcia. I mean, she could grow anything. She just, the epitome of hippie chick. And she came to visit. And she noticed that I was a little off, and who wouldn't be, right? I was actually a poor little weird kid with the high water pants always, and I used to get beat up every day, like every day in school. Beat
up every day in school.
It's okay. We're on the laugh too, so except for big barks, we're good, but the barks will definitely show up.
So I used to get beat up every day in school. So yeah, I was a little off. I never fit in. So anyway, this particular day, I'm laying on my grandmother's bed and watching cartoons, and she starts asking me questions. And she actually gets me to talking about some of the abuse that I'd suffered, but I only talked about what was happening with my stepbrothers. And then she told my grandmother told my mom, and that stopped. Now, they were never prosecuted, and I was told I'd never be around them again, which was a lie, because I was. So, rock on a couple of years. My mother gets better. We're only with my grandmother for a year. We were given back to my mom. My mother's still with Dale. So my abuse didn't stop. And then one day, we go visit my grandmother. And she lived in Sulphur, Oklahoma. And my aunt had been visiting. They had gone fishing that day. And when we get there, and it was a summer day, it was July 6th, actually, in 82. I know that because I was 12. And so we get there, and my grandmother says, we can't find Marcia. Now, Marcia, she led a pretty interesting life. And years and years ago, before I was born, she was actually mugged and dropped on her head, which created a brain tumor for her. It was benign, but it gave her crushing migraines, like debilitating migraines that would bring anybody to their knees. And there's nothing they could do about it. They couldn't operate. So she had had one of her migraines, went to lay down, And when we got there, my grandmother said, we can't find Marcia, and Grandpa's gun is missing. So for whatever reason, I decided I'm going to go to the park. They lived 2 blocks down from the park, and this park was always my favorite place to escape to, is my haven. So I walk the 2 blocks, and I get just inside the entrance, and I look to my left, just in time to see my Aunt Marcia blow her head off. She did not know I was there. And I went into shock. In fact, for years, I did not even remember that I had seen it. I knew I heard it, but I don't remember that I had seen it. In fact, I didn't just recently remember it. I recently remembered it when I recovered the memory. I've been in trauma therapy for several years. So when we leave that night, I still haven't said anything because I'm in complete and utter shock. And there are the police and the park rangers, and they're taking my grandmother to view her body. And the only thing I say is, I want to go spend the night with so-and-so. I just didn't say anything. My life was never calm. It was always chaos. And I raged a lot. I was angry, I was fearful, and I was desperate. I was so desperate that in about 5th grade, I drank rubbing alcohol to try and end my life, because I just wanted everything to stop. I just wanted it to stop. My abuse didn't quit until I moved out of the house. When I was 17, I was still a senior in high school. And I worked 2 part-time jobs, and I finished high school. And I met my first husband. And as you can imagine, my mother's picker was broke, so was mine. And I chose men who liked to tell me how not good enough I was, how much I did not measure up, and treat me as a thing and not a person. And I ended up leaving my first husband, and I got a job with a plumbing company, and my boss assaulted me. And this time I pressed charges. I thought, this time. And he chose a jury trial, and he was his own lawyer, which usually you would think it would not work out, right? Well, it did for him. He got everybody he could, all his plumbers and everybody, to lie about me and paint me as a slut and various other things, a liar. And I had to sit in that courtroom and have him cross-examine me, and he got off. But before the trial, he stalked me. I found death threats on my door. The boyfriend that I had at the time slept in my living room with a shotgun and rigged my gas tank to make sure that nobody messed with my vehicle. So I still wasn't safe. And I let all of that run me for years. Run me hard. Being a victim to my past informed my future. I let it. And so I ended up homeless in my early 20s with no place to live and no food to eat. And thank God I had a woman, a single mom, a police officer, take me in, and she let me sleep on her bedroom floor. She gave me $20 a week so that I could have gas money because I was going to school. I lived in Denton, I was going to school in Fort Worth. But I didn't feel like I had the right to eat her food because, again, I wasn't worth anything, remember. So I weigh about 135 now. I dropped down to 112. And all because I chose to buy into beliefs about who I was and what I meant to the world, you know, based on what other people said and did. And I share my story tonight, not because it's easy and not because I like hearing it. I share it because I know the power of it. That if just one of you, just one, goes, I'm not alone, then it's worth it. There is power in sharing our stories. I'm not courageous in this, although I've been told I am. And a lot of people think that courage is doing something without fear, but that is the exact opposite. Courage is actually feeling the fear and doing it anyway. I don't consider myself courageous, not because I'm fearful or I don't feel fear, either one. I don't consider myself courageous because I'm so passionate about helping people understand that they don't have to suffer in their own life. Because I did, and I paid some very heavy prices. And tonight, I've just given you the highlights of things that have happened. It's not even near all of it. Because life happens. And I will tell you this, I do not regret.
I'll tell you this, hold that thought.
Yeah, it was actually a good
It's okay.
stopping place. Not stopping, but
Yeah.
It's okay, they can edit. It's
that's
okay.
why we have two
No, it's-
cameras.
All good.
You're at, boy howdy, I'll tell you what.
Okay, so I will tell you this. I don't regret anything that I've ever been through. Not one bit. Would I do it again? Hell no, I wouldn't do it again. But I don't regret it because I'm able to use all of those experiences to be here for you and to be here for others. It has taught me the greatest empathy I could ever have. It allows me to be present with people. And I choose to use my experience to better not just my life, but the life of others. And you all have that same choice. You have that same choice to use your past to inform it for the better. And I encourage each and every one of you, when you break into your groups, please be courageous. Open up to each other, because you never know who needs to hear your story. Because we are only as sick as our darkest secret. And the longer you stay in the shadows, the more that grows. And the longer you let your past hang on to you, the more they win. And I don't know about you, but I will be damned if I let them win ever again.